Uh-huh. Here we go. It's Sunday.
That one. Yes, okay. Good morning. Good morning, Timothy, and welcome to Japanese Politics One-on-One. This is episode 240. So we're running well into our fifth year already. So today we're going to talk once again about the latest events in Japanese politics. Japan already has the dates for the next presidential election of the LDP, and we already have a couple of candidates there. But, however, there will be more. And Timothy, this is, something I believe you're going to tell us more about today. Now it is over to you.
Thank you very much, Maya, and good morning, everybody. Boy, is there's so much going on. But here I am anchored off the serene Nabatahama Beach in Shimoda on my classic 44-foot Natter Swan. You can check out this beach on the internet and see where this little cove that I am anchored. You can tell a little bit in the background too. The boat is swaying a little bit because the waves and the wind are kind of high, but it's somewhat representative of the political situation that we're undergoing right now. This is a 3-day weekend, so I took the time to sprint all the way to Shimoda. That's a 9-hour sail. I did that overnight on Friday and Saturday, and I will sprint back on Monday. This is a 3-day weekend. Respect for the Aged Day is on Monday. And I guess everybody knows, but Japan has 16 national holidays this year, and 10 of them create this 3-day extended break. And the next one will be on Sports Day, not very far away, October 13th. We've got so much going on the throughout October. But I want to dive into today's 12 key issues and talk about the yen. We always hit the yen, the Nikkei surge, the Bank of Japan and Fed dynamics, Prime Minister Ishiba's diplomatic moves, including his UN speech and potentially a statement on the Palestinian state, domestic schedule with his resignation and other explosive LDP leadership race issues and news, and the opposition coalition maneuvers and the restructuring that they have undergone internally in preparation. Tokyo Governor Koike's influence will also be part of this race. You can see the boat shifting now because of the wind. And the U.S. tariffs and the $550 billion commitment. I'm going to talk about what that is, what it means, what it actually composes. The Expo for 2025 is into its last month. You need to know about what's going on there. It was a big deal for Osaka and for Ishin, so it's important to talk about it in this last month. South Korea and Japan got into defense talks this last week. Business visa revisions. We've talked about this a couple of times. I want to get into it in a little bit more depth because we've had so many questions about it. And the U.S.-Japan military enhancements that are undergoing constantly, but there's been some recent developments that I think you should know about. And I'd like to wrap it up with a geopolitical comment on what's going on in global tensions and how it impacts Japan, how it potentially impacts us here. And why don't you stay with me? Maya, jump in with your pitch, and then we'll get back to unpack this whirlwind of issues that confront us today. Maya?
All right. Yes, thank you. And to everybody watching us, or if you're going to watch us even later on YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook, also listen to us in Clubhouse, please let us know that you have been there. Hit like, subscribe, follow, and yes, indeed, please do share these briefings with your colleagues and friends and acquaintances if that they might help them understand what is going on in Japan a little bit better, or even much more better. So, Timothy, now over to you.
Thank you, Maya. You know, we started this program almost 5 years ago because Japanese politics was not very well understood. Most people had a pejorative view of it. They weren't following it because it was always, old men in loud suits, and it was very complicated, and you had to know what was going on with the factions and the faction bosses. It's all in flux right now. Let me start today with the markets. And as Friday's close on September 12th, the yen settled at around 148.25 to the dollar. This is a slight dip from, let me see, about, what was the dip? 0.6% from the previous Friday. And not really anything dramatic, but it's enough to reflect the jitters from the Prime Minister's resignation announcement this time last week. Actually, after he watched this show, he tendered his resignation. So you guys have an impact. Over the past few weeks, we've seen volatility in the yen and the dollar. In early August, we had the yen weakening to 147 to 148 after the Bank of Japan held interest rates steady at 0.5%, then a brief rally to 145 in late August amid the Fed rate cut hopes before reversing on U.S. jobs data. June brought an unexpected yen strengthening as it gained safe haven status during the global recession fears. What's driving this? It happens, in a kind of a wave. Certainly, political uncertainty tops the list. Prime Minister Ishiba's resignation last Sunday. It has markets on edge, and it's fearing a shift to looser policies under potential successors. So that's why it's so important to talk about who are the candidates, what they potentially bring to the table, and they will be loudly proclaiming it over the 11-day campaign period. The Bank of Japan under Governor Ueda is walking a real tightrope. That January hike of 0.5%, the highest in 17 years, signals that if inflation sticks near 2% and it's beyond 2%, they're being cautious about, what the impact of the tariffs are going to be. And there's no hike expected this month. There's too much confusion, too much turmoil. But August is on the watch. They'll have a new prime minister at that time. And so I think you can expect some real action there. And over at the Fed, because the Japanese yen is tied quickly or immediately to the US dollar, the week's September 5th jobs report locks in a rate cut soon, softening the dollar and adding yen pressure. So watch February's consumer price index, October's, which will be released on the 16th. And you contrast that, the yen value with the Nikkei. Oh my God, it hit an all-time high at a close of 440,768 on Friday. This is tremendous. It was a reaction to the global rate cut optimism overriding domestic politics, which are just huge news in and of themselves. But this divergence shows investor faith in Japan's export resilience despite the yen's wobble. And so in the near term, expect the yen to linger at 147 to 150, not past 150 until the LDP election clarity on October 4th, not very far from now. A dovish winter could push the yen to 152 to 155, and the Bank of Japan October signal might rally it back down to 145. Excuse me. Tariffs and Fed moves remain wild cards, so keep an eye on export figures and Mr. Ueda's comments in this coming week. The Prime Minister didn't have a wild diplomatic schedule, as you can imagine. He resigned this time last week. He, when people come to visit, maybe as a component of visiting the expo, this is weeks in the planning. So even though he resigned, I think he still has to follow through with the commitments and the schedules that he's put up. But his plate is just absolutely full because of this domestic storm that he has kind of triggered. Last week, we saw several high-level visits. The Slovak president met with the prime minister on September 9th. Colombia's president visited the expo on September 5th. And Panama's leader held a summit and a working lunch with the prime minister on the 5th. So this is really a lot going on there. And in addition to that, the Indo-Pacific commander from the United States was in Tokyo throughout the week for a senior leaders seminar. And cabinet travel was light. But there was the defense minister who visited South Korea in a major visit, a historic visit, actually. I'll get into that. Excuse me. But looking ahead, the spotlight is on Prime Minister Ishiba's attendance at the UN General Assembly in New York this coming week. His itinerary includes travel there September 22nd, 23rd. He might stay a little bit longer, but his speech is scheduled for during the general debate, probably on the 23rd, and he's expected to address the maintaining a free and open international order and reflect on 80 years since the end of the Pacific War. This is a hot button issue. Most people want him just to be quiet about it, just rely on what Mr. Abe said when he was alive about his memorialization of the war. A lot of people want that one to stick, and they don't want it to be. And I think the prime minister wants to put his own spin on it, and I think he's going to do it come hell or high water. So it stirs nerves and anger among some of the critics, and it fears it's going to reopen historical wounds with neighbors and potentially straining alliances. Shoot, he's just made waves this week floating recognition of Palestinian statehood, in fact. And this is a bold pivot that could boost Japan's Middle East profile, but risk U.S. friction, as you can imagine, amid the ongoing Gaza conflicts. There's a lot going on, not just in Japan, and what Japan does has impact elsewhere. I mentioned the Expo 2025 in Osaka is in its final stretch, just 1 month to go until the October 13th close. Visitor numbers have surged just this last month to over 19 million cumulative by late August, and a single day record just this last week of 200,000 people on September 6th. That's impressive given the global travel recovery that we're undergoing and all of the visitors that are coming to Japan. This has kept the flow of foreign leaders coming to Japan and turning it into kind of a expo diplomacy. Everybody comes by, they bring their leaders, they have a pavilion. It's been a real windfall for the prime minister. Unfortunately, he hasn't really been able to capitalize on it with everything else that's going on. More than 100 dignitaries, leaders, heads of state have visited and are expected to visit before the end. 158 participating countries, as you already know. It's already benefiting Osaka with a huge economic boost, new infrastructure on Yumenoshima Island, and positioning Yumenoshima as a life sciences and biomedical hub, aligning with the theme of designing future society for our lives. So for Isshin no Kai, it's a political win showcasing Osaka's regional revitalization and innovative prowess. That's one of the things that is a key term for the prime minister, regional revitalization, not just Osaka. Osaka can do it on its own, but throughout the entire country. And one of the pet projects that he has, and who he will vote for, who he will endorse for the candidate for prime minister to replace him, really depends a lot on what their views are on regional revitalization and some of the pet projects that he has initiated that haven't really, come to fruition. These kinds of initiatives take years. So let's see how he votes with his endorsement. The last month will be electric climatic events they're coming at us now. We've got a little bit of a breather because the candidates will identify themselves between now and the 22nd. So that's almost 8 days away. Then we get into the campaign period, and then the election of the president of the LDP. So it's really going to be a huge newsworthy 2 weeks. Please continue to stay with us, and we'll report on it. But getting back to Yumenoshima and the Expo, it will become an integrated resort with casinos, hotels, and convention spaces. After the Expo finishes, some pavilions will stay as permanent exhibits, and so they got a little bit of a discount when they made a country pavilion, and the state helped them make it a little bit more permanent than some of the other ones that were just prefab, and they're not slammed together, but they're not for the long term. And maybe there'll be a permanent exhibit and a museum there as well, and some of the other things will be dismantled for reuse, ensuring long-term legacy of tourism and R&D. And I have heard that the circular lumber will be dismantled and reused. So that's a really valuable resource. So, excuse me, there's no major outbound trips planned this week for the prime minister, except for his UN trip. But there could be U.S. talks post Trump's speeches over these last week on trade details and the position of tariffs between the United States and Japan. So getting to domestic politics, that's really the heart of today's briefing. Mr. Ishiba's domestic agenda is dominated by his September 7th resignation announcement. Everybody knows that. The whole world knows about it. And when something like this happens, lots of experts come up, listen to the show, and talk somewhat eloquently about what's going on and what's going to happen. So I'm very happy that you use this briefing as a source for, educating people, and also, figuring out what your position is and how Japanese politics works and what it means for you. So citing the LDP's upper house majority loss in July and in the earlier lower house election and internal rifts, this resignation has triggered an explosive leadership race, as you can all kind of appreciate, but I'd like to get into the details. To become a candidate, you need, and we did this just less than a year ago, you need nominations from at least 20 LDP parliamentarians by the September 22nd deadline. So you get 20 people who will endorse you. The people that endorse you can't endorse somebody else, and their names are public. So you get, I don't know how many you'll get. You could possibly get another 9 this time. The internal LDP vote is on October 4th, and selecting the new president takes 2 phases. The second round is somewhat optional. The first round, if a candidate secures a majority of over 50 votes, that can happen if there are only 2 candidates. In the first race, one of them gets more than 50%, then you don't go into the second one. But if there are more than one candidate, it becomes a little bit more complicated. And then it goes into a runoff between the top 2 contenders. And that's what happened last time. Not quite a year ago in 2024, Prime Minister Ishiba won a runoff and became prime minister because he got more votes than the number 2 candidate. Last time, 9 candidates, and we could see this frenzy again. 5 veterans from last year's race are in or signaling. First out of the gate was Mr. Motegi. He announced on September 2nd a significant blitz to boost his profile despite his low polling. He's turning 70 soon. Sometimes that makes no difference in Japanese politics. He's an ex-faction boss. That's big. Not everybody in his faction actually loved him, but he's going to be pitching pay hikes, outpacing inflation via stimulus, Bank of Japan normalization, regional subsidies over cash handouts, and investment tax cuts. He's a really smart cookie. I go to his briefings invariably. He is really good on his feet. He's a smart guy. I think he's an excellent candidate for prime minister. It's too early to kind of give a guess. His early platform kind of sets the tone that others must differentiate from. So he is the first out of the gate. He's taken that bold step. So it says something about him. But he's not the only one. Kobayashi Takayuki, he's 50 years old. He announced September 11th, 3 days later, and he's pushing rightward with a generational appeal, earnestness, and social media savvy, as you know him to be, but a thin resume compared to his peers. Sanai Takaichi, quite quiet so far, but plans a next week declaration aiming to remake the LDP as conservative, endorsing zero consumption tax on food, meeting supporters and even ex-Prime Minister Kishida to get her beyond the numbers, beyond the 20. She's easily got 20s. This is her third try as prime minister. I think she will be a huge contender. Koizumi has been in the news a lot, agricultural minister. Yeah, the press love him. I think he's taking it a little bit slow, and he's huddling with allies like Mr. Kihara Seiji, who is just a top-class politician, very polished. And I think that's one of the strengths of Koizumi. He's so young that he must rely on his cadre of advisors. And I think with his father as former prime minister, he might be able to pull that off. But he is a lot younger than the other contenders. A lot of people want to see him as prime minister to kind of remake the LDP, but a lot of people are just really terrified that he could be prime minister. They don't trust him. They don't like him. They think he's all fluff. But Hayashi, the chief cabinet secretary, he informed the prime minister of his run on September 12th. So he hasn't publicly announced, but he's confided in the prime minister. He is in the Kishida faction, the former faction. I think he was probably maybe number 2. He is an excellent guy. He's a great guy, perfect English, scandal-free. Basically, he's got good opposition ties and even musical talents that make him a strength. He does have enemies, I have heard. I've never really experienced anything that is distasteful or kind of counter to what you would expect out of a really stand-up Japanese politician. But then former finance minister Kato Nobukatsu is mulling it, but he's unlikely to declare. I think he's probably going to give it a rest. it is possible that others that we have been looking forward to, Konotaro, for example, might give it a rest to be outside. It's hard to tell right now. There's another week before they actually have to pitch their letter of candidacy. And what does the public opinion say? Fresh polling shows a bit of skepticism. Only 19.6% think the race restores LDP trust. 76% disagree. Overall, Takaichi leads at 28% and Koizumi at 22%. That's kind of similar to where they were before. Hayashi is at 11% higher than he was this time last year. Motegi and other non-candidate Kono is at 6.1%. They were really down the last time. Kobayashi at 3.6% currently. And among LDP supporters, Koizumi surges to 36% and Takaichi at 15.7%, highlighting the base versus the broader appeal dilemma. So the policy debates swirling around the fiscal direction will include the spectrum from Kobayashi's open consumption tax cuts to Takaichi's food zeroing to Hayashi's opposition, Motegi's hawkish pivot. He'll be tough on tax cuts as a coalition condition, and he favors subsidies, and Koizumi's middle ground skepticism. Post October 4, the Prime Minister Ishiba will call a diet session to resign and let all the members elect the new Prime Minister in mid-October. It will happen very quickly. So we've got the election for the LDP president. That will involve a lot of moving parts, including the opposition parties. And then we move from there to an election of the Prime Minister. The LDP lacks majorities in both houses, as everybody on this program knows, so they must entice an opposition party like Ishin or the Democratic Party for the People for coalition support. Never in post-war history has the LDP needed to rely on this opposition involvement to seat their president. This is an unbelievable mix, and it must solidify during the campaign, because if the opposition party is going to vote for one candidate, let's say Koizumi, and it's the opposition party, if you become prime minister, then we'll form this coalition. But if it's not you, we don't want to be out. So this horse trading and this playing among different candidates, it's going to be a wild horse race. And it will color the next administration with concessions for the opposition party to join the coalition on taxes, education, and far more. So it's not going to involve the Constitutional Democratic Party, the largest opposition party. They don't want to join in a coalition with the LDP. They've already said that. But there's other moves as well. Mr. Motegi was photographed buddying up with Democratic Party for the People's Tamaki this last week, and Koizumi with Ishin. They had arms around the shoulders and stuff just last week. Ishin prefers Koizumi, but is open to Takaichi and Hayashi, and the Democratic Party for the People promises their feelings were betrayed by Prime Minister Ishiba, and so their point is, as long as it's not Ishiba, then we might join the coalition. So there's it's just a lot of tension there. Komeito, the current partner of the LDP, threatens exit if a right-winger wins and competes with Ishin, and Komeito competes with Ishin in Osaka. So it's not to be left alone. The governor of Tokyo, Ms. Koike, has a regional clout, and her voice also will make a difference in this election too. So it's not just who's going to be prime minister. First and foremost is who's going to be the president of the LDP, and then we move into the race of prime minister. It's going to be really an exciting time. Expect factional fireworks within the LDP over these next 11 days, and markets and voters are absolutely glued to the tube. You remember there's some confusion about this $550 billion commitment Japan made to Mr. Trump. The details have not been really very clear. Mr. Akazawa went to Washington, D.C. and got a little bit more clarity on that and on tariffs. So he met with key figures, the Secretary of Treasury and the Secretary of Commerce, and they have kind of clarified pretty clearly now that there's a 15% tariff on Japanese goods, including autos, effective September 16th and retroactive to August 7th. So that explains why there was a little bit of this pause in the economy, because people were afraid that should the tariffs go in, it will be retroactive. So the economy here actually stalled. There's not going to be, there's not going to be any stacking or refunds, and they're still going through a couple of fixes here. But Mr. Akazawa denies that it's an unequal treaty. He emphasizes bilateral investment commitment as a break, and the JBIC's deficit avoidance rules as constraints. So he's got some guardrails on that. But with regard to the $550 billion promise to President Trump, it's not a cash handout. It's a government-backed loans and guarantees for U.S. projects like infrastructure, mutually beneficial with U.S. selection, but shared gains. The timeline is over the coming years. I think it's 10 years, potentially up to a decade, for investment flow, and Japan recoups its principal before profit sharing shifts. U.S. takes 90% of the profits thereafter. So it's kind of a gift, but at least the Japanese are guaranteed a 10% return. The U.S. will get 90% of that. Previous projections were lower, around 400 to 500 billion in bilateral talks, but this historic commitment escalated to avert steeper tariff impositions, addressing Trump's reciprocal agenda while protecting Japanese interests. A lot went into this, and there's still a little bit of curiosity. As I dive deeper into it, as it becomes a little bit more relevant, I will be reporting it to you. One of the other things that happened this last week of great significance is the meeting on September 8th in Seoul between defense ministers of South Korea and Japan, Nakatani and Mr. An. This was historic. It's the first visit by a Japanese defense chief to South Korea in 10 years. That's huge. And it yields it projects actually more regular visits and technical cooperation and annual Japan, South Korea, U.S. trilateral drills, which have been occurring, but the stickiness between Japan and South Korea has left a lot to be desired. So it looks like there's going to be a lot more going on there. There's some aerial, naval, and cyber exercises against North Korean threats that are in the works, and it happens every once in a while. That is coming up as well. And we hope and we predict deeper intel sharing and exercises ahead. So we look forward to that, even though there's a lot of volatility in South Korean politics and the relationship between Japan and South Korea as usual. So the U.S. has enhanced Japan's defenses ongoing. New advanced missile systems deployed recently for deterrence. It's unrelated but notable that Japan tested a railgun on a floating platform this last week. And this, once again, is a signal of the Japanese government lurch towards a robust military-industrial complex. It means that they're going to be building military equipment here, defensive in nature, not offensive, because that would be a violation of Article 9 of the Constitution. But they are really going strong on potentially dual use. You can maybe get away with that, but definitely on defense material, and they're going strong on that. There was also a new Tokyo-Manila Pact, cross-training and posting soldiers akin to the status of forces agreement that the United States has, but not like the status of forces. I mean, that's really robust. But there are several friendly nations that have a similar kind of trading with Japan, troops cross-training, troops being posted in Japan. This is definitely a big deal, very new. And Japanese self-defense forces also being posted to their nations as well. That's, wow, how much Japan has changed just over a very brief period of time. And it's you know, as a consequence of what's going on in China and the potential of kinetic action towards Taiwan and also North Korea and everything else that's going on. But it's you know, it's just really what a mix of news and movement. You just have to keep on top of it every day. It's happening so quickly. We talked briefly a couple of weeks ago about the revision to the business manager visa, and it becomes effective in mid-October. So it is designed to curb misuses like paper companies, but it really hits a lot of people who have come to Japan to open a business, to exercise their skills and probably bring product or skills or enhancements to Japan. But the capital requirement now is up from 5 million. You could get 5 million paid in capital and get a business visa with a couple of requirements. You could stay here for a year, perhaps 2 years, as long as your business was generating a viability. But now it's going to 30 million. You need 3 years management experience or a relevant master's. You have to hire at least one full-time Japanese or a permanent resident. You have to have a certified business plan from a CPA, a tax accountant, or some sort of a professional consultant. There's even talk now that you have to have a Japanese language ability in order to get this highly valued visa. So let's see. There were about 41,000 foreign residents in this area on the business visa, and it's a 50% jump from previous years. So reports suggest only around 4% currently meet the new capital threshold. So potentially up to 96% or nearly 40,000 holders of the visa will be impacted, especially for renewals when existing holders must scale up capital or staff to comply. New applicants will face the full barriers immediately. People who have the visa now will have, when it lapses, they have to show that they're meeting the requirements. This shift aims to attract more substantive investments and genuine entrepreneurs. Reducing shell companies and boosting economic contributions is the story, but it may deter smaller startups with lower visa approvals short-term and push aspirants toward the expanded startup visa, which now nationwide with a 2-year stay. Overall, the recalibration will emphasize quality over quantity. It kind of harkens back to Sanseto's criticism of the foreigners and over tourism, that sort of thing. I think it bleeds into the business area. I don't think there's a direct connection there, but I think Japan opened their doors. They were a little bit more lax than many people in comparing the G7 countries. So Japan's new requirements more closely aligns with the peers. For example, the U.S. EB-5 visa requires $800,000 investment. France's requires $330,000 in French money, and assets plus 2 jobs. Italy's requires $275,000 for a startup. Germany's has no fixed minimum, but demands viable plans, like a good business plan that's going to perform. Canada's focuses on endorsements without a set capital. The UK's emphasizes innovation over funds. So Japan's hike brings it somewhat into line with mid-range G7 standards, emphasizing a serious commitment like France or Italy, rather than the looser prior setup. This might have escaped you, but the opposition parties are gearing up for something big. So each of them, the Constitutional Democratic Party, Ishin, and the Democratic Party of the People, have each gone through leadership changes over the last 2 weeks. They are girding for battle, whether it's the next election or the prime minister selection. I think it's a bit of both. Updates on the 3 main. The Constitutional Democratic Party announced new leadership team on September 11th. Leaning on veterans like Azumi Jun as Secretary General. He was ex-finance minister and a budget chair. He was in the news quite a bit this last 5 months or so. Mixed reviews on whether it is addressing the challenges. Ishin, on the other hand, is co-led by Mr. Fumitake, and it's courting the LDP pretty hard via YouTube discussions and prioritizing their agenda. The Democratic Party for the People, Mr. Tameki, is pivoting hard against the Constitutional Democratic Party and running direct challengers. Secretary General Shimba is stressing promises of keeping in the race, and he met very briefly with Koizumi recently, so that's a kind of a big signal. There's a lot in flux now. But I'd like to zoom out just a little bit and talk about geopolitics. And while Japan mires in this domestic drama, global undercurrents are just unmistakable and worrying. It's been bothering, I think, everybody in this discussion for a long time. In Ukraine, Just currently, recently, Russian offensives continue. They had an exercise kicking off on September 12th. Strikes killed 3 on the 13th, and Mr. Zelensky is pushing to starve Russia's war machine. Peace talks have stalled as per the Kremlin instructions. Israel's Gaza strikes ramped up incredibly this last week. It looks like peace talks are off. They've killed a bunch of people in neighboring states as well. The leadership of the Hamas. There was a UN school that was bombed by Israel on the 13th. And so now that puts the UN once again at odds with Israel, and once again overwhelmingly voting for a two-state solution. And it's just really a volatile area. And it's not just there. Venezuela somehow just came into the crisis as well. U.S. Marines boarded a Venezuela tuna vessel on the 13th, which heightened tensions and a hostile intercept involving Caracas. North Korea receiving a huge wheat and flour aid from Russia. 33,000 tons are promised post-summit, with over 2,000 tons already delivered. So this is kind of a tit for tat, a rewarding of what they've done in Ukraine, sending soldiers over there. And you remember in our last week's report, our great leader was congratulating the people who were returning and rewarding the families who had lost loved ones in that conflict. The China-Taiwan tension continues to persist. Taiwan updated its security handbook, wary of these threats, and the PLO incursions include over 300 on a monthly basis. This includes flyovers and naval vessels. The minister in Taiwan has warned constantly of a domino effect if China takes the island. Obviously, that's the big thing that everybody is gearing up for, and the forces being organized by the United States to have this coalition of like-minded countries should China attempt to do that. But the tension is there. There is just a real palatable tension that you can feel in the air, and it's not just there, it's other places too. Deep divisions just aren't with the United States too. South Korea has impeached their ex-president, Mr. Yoon, twice, January and July, over martial law bids, and now he is in solitary confinement. The Philippines arrested ex-president Duterte on March of this year. A warrant for drug war killings. You might remember when he was president there. France saw block everything protests just this last week with almost 700 arrests amid a cut in the budget. And yesterday's enormous London protest, oh my gosh, I mean, it was all over the news. People are really starting to straighten their backbone, and they don't want to have any more of the immigration coming in. They're clashing with police and counter-protesters. It's just really something big and unmistakable is moving underfoot. And then we had this murder of Charlie Kirk, who was gruesomely assassinated. The suspect has been arrested in Utah, and Melania, Mrs. Trump, and the widow's tearful address really is hit hard. He was just in Japan last week. Did you know that? He was at a Sanseito rally. Kind of makes sense. He was at a Sanseito rally just this last week, and the leader of Sanseito utilized him as you would expect anybody who's had any kind of relationship with him. But I didn't know that his reach went that far. But it is a huge impact on the dialogue, the political dialogue, the right versus the left. I mean, the divisions in the United States are not just limited to the United States, and these global fractures, they somewhat mirror Japan's own. We're going through our own turmoil as well. We're navigating it with resilience. We've got to elect a president for the LDP and then a new prime minister. A lot's going to happen over the next 8 weeks. And then we'll be moving into the close of the year when the budget is submitted by the bureaucrats. It closes up for the year. And then between January and the end of March, we talk about the budget. But there is just so much going on, and I really want to thank everybody that's part of this Japan Hands community for your engagement. You keep us sharp, you keep us going, you encourage us greatly, and I really appreciate it. And as Maya has always encouraged you, please share it with others. It's our gift to you, but share it, and let's continue this dialogue and this understanding of what's going on in Japan and why it's important to you to be cued into it. Reporting on the deck of the good ship Grimm's, this is Tim Langley. Maya, over to you for Q&A.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Timothy. And we are moving to the Q&A. And to everybody who shared their questions and comments and thoughts with us, thank you very much for this. Please continue doing that. Now I'm going through these comments and questions in chronological order. That is the order of received. So please, once again, bear with us. And
well, we know who's first.
yes, we do. I am sure that everybody does. All right. So now the first question comes from Byron. And it is, well, we've got a couple of questions there. The question is, it appears that Prime Minister Ishiba's empty threat to dissolve the House of Representatives when there is near unanimous opinion within the cabinet, and indeed most LDP parliamentarians that a general election anytime soon would be catastrophic, was the final straw that broke the camel's back. What are your thoughts on this, Timothy?
Okay, so in fact, you'll remember last week we reported that the Prime Minister met with Mr. Koizumi and Mr. Suga. The two of them met with the Prime Minister at the Prime Minister's residence. The Prime Minister was actually getting ready to close down the House. That was his entree to these two gentlemen. Excuse me just a minute. That was why he called them together. He wanted to tell them this is what his plan was. He's going to close down the House. He's going to have an election. And God damn it, I'm going to stay Prime Minister. He met with Mr. Suga and Mr. Koizumi. Strangely enough, Mr. Suga stayed for less than an hour, and Mr. Koizumi stayed for more than 2 hours, and they talked. Mr. Koizumi and Mr. Ishiba. Wow, what would explain that? What would explain Mr. Ishiba deigning to meet with and rely on Mr. Koizumi's advice and counsel before making that huge decision? So I don't know if it's really accurate to say the camel's back was broken, but I do. It's just unavoidable that Mr. Koizumi had a huge voice in convincing the Prime Minister that it's not good for the LDP, it's not good for Mr. Ishiba's legacy, and I will be a nice candidate, don't you think, Mr. Prime Minister? So there's some of that going on too. I think the Prime Minister, yes, he holds a lot of appreciation for Mr. Koizumi. Mr. Koizumi helped him a lot when the agriculture minister got into trouble and Mr. Koizumi became the agriculture minister, and Mr. Ishiba's numbers flew up. They were really down in the tank. But it's just a really curious state of affairs. I would have thought he might have gone with somebody a little bit more seasoned as his counsel, but you just never know. But that's what I know. The next day after that meeting, he decided, of course, he watched this program first, and then he decided he was going to resign.
All right, thanks for that. And the next one is, well, the larger question is why prime ministers in Japan generally last only a year or two.
Yeah.
In recent years, apart from Koizumi, Abe, and Kishida, there have not been long-lasting prime ministers. Why has that been happening?
Yes, it's part and parcel of Japanese politics, isn't it? But I hope it's changing. You know, it took quite a while before people started pronouncing Mr. Abe's name right. He was prime minister and he was president or Prime Minister Abe for the longest period of time, and people finally got around to it. And the fact that you have somebody that's got a couple of years as prime minister, that's huge. When you're changing these prime ministers, Mr. Ishiba, I mean, God bless him, but he didn't last a year. He was elected. The party elected him to be their prime minister. When you look at the choices that were presented, you know, Japanese politics would have moved in maybe a different direction, but there was a lot of bile, there was a lot of bad juju in the air. So kind of whoever took over Mr. Ishiba rightly says, the reason why we lost the upper house election and maybe even the lower house election is not because of me, it's because of Seiwakai. It's because of, what happened in the Abe faction, all these people taking the money. And that colored, the LDP was dominated by the Abe faction. It had by far the largest, almost twice as many members in the faction than the next contender. So anybody that was going to take that position was going to be in difficulty. Maybe some other candidate would have lasted a little bit longer than a year. Maybe they wouldn't have called for an election soon after being elected prime minister, in spite of their promise not to. There's a lot going on there. It's difficult, but that's why it's important to tune in and to be abreast of what's going on. I would hope, it's a parliamentary democracy. So that means the people inside the Diet elect their leader and they can unelect him at any time. It's not like a presidency. The presidency of the LDP is different. They can vote him out, but he has a set term. The prime minister has a set term too. But the voice of the Diet members, they elect, they can unelect, and it doesn't take very much. It takes a vote of no confidence, which doesn't require a super majority. They can do it at any time, and I think maybe, it's even too early to have a general election. I think Mr. Ishiba, while he might have remained as prime minister a little bit longer, assuming he closed down the House, all of the members of the lower house went for election again, including him. He needs to resign as prime minister. When they come back after the election, first item of business is the Diet, both the upper house and the lower house, needs to vote for the prime minister. So it's not clear that he would have even succeeded himself as prime minister. I think it would have caused a lot of turmoil. His gamble was that the LDP would do better. Since I closed down the House, the LDP is going to dominate. They're going to have a majority in the lower house, and we're going to be back on track. I don't think that's in the cards, and I think that's why this next election for LDP president, which will involve some opposition party joining forces, and then the vote for the prime minister, part of that deal will be when we have the election for prime minister, you vote for our guy, right? Not your guy. You're in the opposition. Typically, the candidates for the prime ministership are always the leaders of the opposition parties. So Mr. Noda obviously will run as a candidate. The Communist Party will have a candidate for president. The real party that's going to win is the one that you don't even have to have a super majority. You just have to have the most votes to represent the entire Diet. And there's no guarantee that that's going to be an LDP individual.
Right, and I want to make also one remark, let's say here, that yes, very often we see prime ministers that don't last for more than a year or not more than 2 years. But at the same time, there is continuity here in Japan. And so there is no sudden change of policies, regardless of who comes to power, regardless of how long they last, and so on. And even
That's a
with
great
Mr.
point. Yeah.
And even with Mr. Abe, when he decided to initiate the Abenomics, it took him years and years on end to be able to gain momentum with his new policies, right? So in this sense of the word, although from outside, a succession of prime ministers who last for 1 or 2 years looks like or projects of an image of instability basically within the country domestically, we do not see that and we do not feel it. And
That's
of
right.
course, this is because of the politics, what happens in the Diet, and it is also because of the fact that Kasumi Guseki still holds a lot of power, even though Mr. Abe managed to take away some of that power and transfer it to the Kantei. And I think that from outside, this dynamic is not obvious, but if you have lived and worked in Japan for a while, you do understand that there is stability and there is continuity of policies here. So, and thank you very much for this. And there is one more question from Byron. It comes here. Now that Prime Minister Ishiba is going out, is the path clear for Isshin Nokai to join the ruling coalition and cabinet as a way to make Osaka the second capital of Japan?
Yeah.
So, Timothy.
Yeah, of course. That's obviously in the cards. It's not completely clear that they will cross the finishing line. I think Mr. Tamaki wants the same thing. Yeah, there'll be a lot of horse trading that you won't hear about until actually the prime minister is selected, and then the prime minister names his cabinet. So you'll get signals of that. You'll get smoke signals of it, but I don't think it'll be very clear during the LDP race. But it will be clear during the race for prime minister, and the race for the prime minister will be very quick. That won't take much time at all. Maybe once they get the diet in session, it's the first order of business. It can happen in a day or two.
Right. Yes. Okay. And moving on, I'm just trying to now group the questions based on the topic of the questions, of course, because I also want to honor the order we receive them in, but still sometimes it's not practical to do that. Well, now I'm moving to another question from Rossi Lamont Walter this time, which came earlier this morning. So the question is, in the Japan Times, contributing writer Michael MacArthur Bosak described the internal politics of the LDP as a bloodless coup in his piece titled "The Liberal Democratic Party's Internal Coup is Complete."
Yeah.
I have two questions. Number one, Timothy, do you think this is an accurate description, or why or why not?
Yes, that was a great article by Michael Bosak. He's a great analyst. He does Japan and Korea politics. His father's very well known, and I think his grandfather is pretty well known as well. I don't know if you could characterize it as a coup. A coup sounds a little bit more deadly, but definitely there has been a huge shift, and I think you're going to find a alignment of forces that we had not expected. So maybe that's a coup. The people who were out are going to come back in. I kind of don't think so. Not the way Japanese politics works. Just kind of like, as you said, Maya, there is a stabilizing force, and Japanese politics moves to a different bum, but they follow the same rhythm. So a coup sounds like a little bit more nefarious than what actually happened. I think a lot of people are just sick of the prime minister being prime minister, that there's been so much turmoil and there's no election positivity going on, the lower house, the upper house, the Tokyo elections. And they wanted a different voice. And by the way, as all of these things are going on geopolitically throughout the world, Japan's presence there, at least at the prime ministerial level, is almost zero. He attends a couple of these summits. He goes, he shows his face. He's not very effective. I don't think he's well liked or well understood. He's not very comfortable, as Mr. Kishida was. Mr. Kishida was masterful. He was better at it than even Mr. Abe. But for some reason, Abe and Trump, they had a chemistry. I can't even figure it out because their personalities are very different. Comparatively, Mr. Abe's a little bit dorky, but they did hit it off, and they had a really warm relationship. And I think that was triggered by the fact that when Mr. Trump became a candidate for president, Mr. Abe was the first one to show up and congratulate him, gave him a golf club, and they hit it off after that. But Mr. Trump is a difficult person to understand, but somehow Mr. Abe figured it out and hit the right note with him. Mr. Ishiba he's nowhere close. I don't know if even Mr. Kishida got close to that. Certainly Mr. Suga was, I don't think they were even on speaking terms, or if he even called him on the phone to say hello or happy birthday or anything like that. Yeah, I hope that's somewhat responsive.
Okay, well, thank you for the answer. I hope, Rossi, that this answered the question. If not, we can continue discussing maybe later on. And the second question from Rossi here is, how is the ousting being described in Japanese by the Japanese?
I don't know. There are Japanese here on the program who can maybe opine about that. I mean, I read to you the results. You know, Japanese love surveys, and Japanese politicians read the surveys and they act accordingly. So the fact that Mr. Kobayashi, Mr. Motegi, you've got the same group here. It could be another 9 people. Another 9 people, that's a lot of people to hear on NHK talk about their platform and then why you want to vote for me. And who gets to vote? LDP members and LDP chapters, and also card-carrying LDP members. They did decide, by the way, that it would be a full vote. So card-carrying members of the LDP, diet members who belong to the LDP will vote, and also the various LDP chapters. But yeah, the Japanese public usually speaks through polls, and polls, I guess they're pretty accurate because people really put a lot of value on that, and that's why we report it whenever it comes out. And I think everybody was just waiting for the other shoe to fall and not to have another election and to change the leadership of the country from Mr. Ishiba to somebody fresher, younger, more vibrant, somebody who could kind of project Japan's image a little bit better. And I think that's what the public wants.
All right, thanks for that. And now we're moving to a question from Hiroko-san. She writes, it is said that Prime Minister Ishiba has around 70,000 party supporters.
Yeah.
Who will they vote for in the upcoming leadership election?
That's a great...
Yes,
Go ahead.
Sorry. Ms. Takaichi declined cabinet post when the Ishiba administration was formed.
Right.
Some believe this decision may have affected the psychology of those supporters, potentially resulting in fewer votes for her. What is your view on this?
That's a great observation. So, yes, Miss Takaichi, she's on the right-hand side of the LDP. And then you've got the left-hand side, and you've got a lot of people in between. But you've got the side that's very favorable to China, very friendly to China. It does cause a little bit of irritation to the United States and to some people in the business community. But I mean, Japan and China are huge trade partners, so you can't really, stick a middle finger at them. I mean, you have to do things diplomatically and trade relations. I mean, Japan depends hugely on China, and China similarly values Japan as a trading partner. So with Takaichi, she didn't want to be in the administration. Maybe nobody wanted her there too, but she did. The result is she wasn't in. She could play a gadfly position of criticizing the administration, that sort of thing. She didn't really do that, though. I think she's just been aligning her forces to make this conservative team much stronger. And San Saito is a big supporter of her. So if the prime minister puts his arm around Mr. Koizumi and said, "This is my candidate," that's what the game is right now. Who is he going to choose and say, "This will be my successor. He will carry on the heritage that I've established, regional revitalization, all of these issues. He's going to go forward with that." So for those of you who voted for me and believed in me, that 70,000, vote for this guy. So there's going to be a huge competition for that. And Takaichi she says she'll do it on her own. There are enough people who dislike the prime minister who would vote for her. And by the way, it's not a rat race. There are 9 contenders. There are 10 or 15. Who knows how many there are going to be. 11-day campaign period. They have to distinguish themselves somehow. All you have to do is be first or second. And looking at all of the candidates, once their applications for candidacy are submitted on the 21st, and then the 22nd is the deadline, we'll know who the candidates are. You can make a pretty good guess. We'll certainly make an attempt at guessing on the Sunday following that. But yeah, it's really hard to tell. It's Japanese politics, so it moves very, very quickly.
Right, by Japanese standard, again.
Yes, by Japanese standard, right.
Yes. All right. And since you mentioned Sanae Takaichi and that she's trying to once again amass conservative force, and also that Sanseito seems to be in favor of her candidacy. So we have a question from Manabe-san, and it is, okay, how far-right forces influence voting in Japan, including political parties and the influence within each party?
Well, when you think of the far right, you think of far right. Who can get any more right wing than the right wingers, the guys in the trucks and the loudspeakers, and return to the imperial succession and the role of the emperor in Japanese society and politics. That's on the far side there. But I think it's like, I think in other countries too, it requires some event or some kind of trend that really gets people angry or excited. And that's what you need in an election. Most people, they're not going to vote in an election or in a campaign unless they feel somehow spiritually attached to the candidate or to the race. And I think you're going to see voter turnout increasing in many of the G7, the G20 countries, because there's just so much turmoil going on there. There's not that much turmoil here in Japan. We haven't seen the invasion of immigrants, although there are a lot of tourists that come into town. The business visa is not, it's not a reaction to foreigners per se. It's actually a recalibration at a more, not even a universal standard, but I mean, it was easy to come into Japan, get a business visa. A lot of people took advantage of it for good purpose, for good reason. They weren't scamming the system. You might say, well, it's because of the Chinese. No, it's not disproportionately. The Chinese are 50% or more of the visa holders for business investors, and the violations for paper companies or buying a ryokan or stuff like that, it's other people are doing it too. It's not against the Chinese. And I think the Sanseito position about foreigners, it just struck a chord. But I don't think it's got long-term legs, and I don't think Japan will go in that direction. But it could. You saw what happened in London yesterday. But England doesn't have the problem that Japan has. People aren't coming over in droves in rubber boats from France and invading and coming to the country and then being hosted and given hotel rooms and being coddled. And I mean, it's changing the fabric of British society. Clearly, it's changing the fabric there, not just there, in France too. Japan doesn't have quite that issue. It's got other issues, but I don't think anything that's as electric as something like that. So pretty much same-o. It will be going with the flow. I don't think you're going to see a huge shift, but it would be nice for somebody younger, a little bit more geopolitically savvy. I think Mr. Ishiba was very domestic, was comfortable with his domestic prowess, with his skill in defense issues, but it's just not enough. You need somebody a little bit richer, a little bit all-encompassing. And I think maybe this, yeah, it's hard to say. I was going to say maybe this new prime minister will have a little bit longer legs, but I don't think so. I think there still needs to be a little bit more bloodletting. Not agreeing with Mr. Bosak's characterization of a coup, but there is a lot going on in politics. The factions have disappeared. There are people that want to get back. They want to get back to a more stable LDP that can call the shots and can push legislation through. It's just a lot of turmoil right now.
Right, and we don't know really what direction all these events of the past 2 or 3 years will take Japanese politics in at this point of time. Even though, once again, there is stability, there is continuity and everything. But I think that we need at least a decade to pass before the LDP looks back and says, okay, so Mr. Kishida, when he disassembled the factions, that was a good thing for us, or that was a terrible thing for us. So it's still too early for anybody, I believe, to say what really the impact was, whether it was positive or negative. But anyway, since you mentioned once again the article in the Japan Times, we have Hiroku-san. Thank you very much for helping us with this. So she writes, ousting many of the Japanese newspapers stated that this is zokuto or danen, or in English it means abandoning plans to remain in office, or drive someone out of office. So this is how the Japanese media, let's say, framed well the decision of PM Ishiba to step down. All right, and also there is one more thing. Yes, Timothy.
One thing, let me emphasize though, that never in post-war history has the LDP had to rely on the opposition party to select who is going to be the leader of the LDP. It's always been internal. It's always been the faction bosses that decide. It's always been internal. This time, they must rely on an opposition party to help succeed with the LDP president and thereby succeed the same individual to become prime minister. So it's not just the opposition party. I mentioned Governor Koike. She has a role in this. This is a new ballgame. And when we emerge from it, it is possible that Japanese politics has changed forever as a consequence of that. It's a new ballgame. And we've been saying this so many times over the last maybe 10 months that this is the first. This has never happened. We've never had so many candidates for prime minister. We've never for LDP president. We've never had this. We've never had that. The LDP and the mission of having a military defense complex. This is moving in leaps and bounds. It's very quiet because of Article 9, but it's making huge progress. 4 years ago, we never would have thought of that. 4 years ago, we never would have said Japan is going to exceed 1% of GDP on military defense. It's just, everything is just up in the air. And it's not just here. It's globally, something really serious is going on.
Right. Okay. And thank you for this. It looks like, yes, we have gone through the comments and questions. I want to tell everybody thank you for them. Thank you for sharing your thoughts and also commenting on what is happening. I have to say also that there is a certain time lag between the different platforms we do this on. So I may sometimes, miss a question or two before we close or after we close. So please forgive me for that if that happens. Of course, we will address that question in the next session. So, again, everybody, thank you very much for staying with us, for coming here on Saturday morning. I know for many people it's still early morning, for me too, but somehow I have gotten into the habit of waking up a little bit earlier and coming to, to the platform. And also, once again, if you think that these briefings might be beneficial or informative for your colleagues, even your bosses, or your friends and family, your acquaintances, please share them and let them know as well. Help us spread the word. And Timothy, a few words before we sign.
No, I just want to echo what you said. I really appreciate the audience and your questions and your involvement. 5 years, we're approaching our 5-year mark, Maya, and it's just been incredible. 5 years every week talking about Japanese politics to help you understand what's going on and help you predict how you can align your forces or your intelligence so that your company or you personally benefit from what's going on in the economy and in Japanese politics. So thanks for staying tuned. Thank you, Maya, for creating this opportunity and this platform.
Well, thank you. All right, and that's all for the moment. We'll see you next Sunday at 8:20 or a little bit later. Remember that we do this also on YouTube and LinkedIn, Facebook as well, and you can find us there and watch later on during the week if you have missed the live stream. Well, see you next time then.